Series C round of $10 million in July, and we're planning to invest more in climate positive setups. But where we see ourselves at the next level of venture building is to launch our 50 to 70 million fund, invest in more than 25 to 30 startups, and have a portfolio of 100 million in venture building in not just the areas that we've invested in currently, so solar home solutions, commercial and industrial solar, e-mobility, energy efficiency, we have our companies represented, technology, ecosystem enablers, carbon credits, but also new sectors like agriculture, agri-tech, waste management, going further into carbon. And we see ourselves contributing to, with more consulting mandates. We already have the Energy Entrepreneurs Growth Fund, CEI Africa. We've got other mandates that we are looking into that contribute further to the sector. And also building the team. We're 20. We hope to build more to go to above 40 in various countries in Africa working on the fund. And to also contribute to knowledge in the sector. We have led on many of the knowledge publications that there have been. One of our principals, Eva, is a board member at Gogla, so we are very active in the industry. I'm a committee member at the Kenya Renewable Energy Association, and we are represented by our CEO, Andrew Amadi. So we hope to keep contributing to the conversations. We've had publications and webinars on e-mobility. We've had publications on making solar home solutions more profitable, looking at the market and how we can improve it. And we hope to involve everyone, all of you. So this conference is also more of a brainstorming session to also have your thoughts and insights at the end of each session in the Q&A so that we can talk about how to build the sector more. There will be quizzes at the end of each session. Sorry, I forgot to mention that, so please have your notepads ready. Yeah, and it's going to be an exciting, very exciting day, and we have a lot to be grateful for, and we also have a lot of challenges for the future, even as we prepare for COP27 and as we prepare for 2030 and 2050, and we're very committed to that. So, I will introduce our first panel, which is going to be moderated by Tukam Gofanke, and we are going to be talking about electric mobility. So Tukam, welcoming you to the front with your panel to give us more insight.
so much, Nico. And Washikala, last but not least, I think as I was saying, 64 and counting, probably soon to be entering the e-mobility space. Could you?
Yeah, my name is Malangu Washikala. I am the co-founder and CEO of Alte Group. Alte Group is a clean energy and sustainable transportation company. We have been operating in the DRC for the last 9+ years, mainly on the Pego solar business. We have just started our e-mobility business. We are piloting in 4 cities in the Democratic Republic of Congo now. The idea is to learn quickly and start scaling first in the DRC and then maybe looking at other markets across Africa.
Thank you so much, Washikala. I think maybe we'll start with you, right? Since, from as you said, everybody, unless people heard about Altec, right? Altec is a solar home system company serving households in Congo. What interested you? Why e-mobility?
Yeah, definitely. So Altec want to position itself as a key player in this transition to green economy. As I said, first in the Democratic Republic of Congo, because it's where we come from and where we started. So moving into e-mobility was definitely an easy decision. But also, if you look at the mobility sector now in Africa, especially as it relates to two-wheelers, employs a lot, creates a lot of jobs for young people, as you said, definitely in your introduction. As you know, Africa is a very young continent with a large population, which is, below 30. And creating jobs for those young people definitely becomes a challenge, not only for governments, but also the private sector. So that's why. So this is also one of the reasons why we decided to go into the business. But if you look also at this sector, it's like mostly it's informal. So there is a huge opportunity to formalize the sector and really, create a lot of impact in that area. Yeah, so these are some of the reasons that, made us decide to move into the sector. And, it provides also a growth opportunity for your business. So, yeah, it's a very interesting sector.
Well, thanks for that. Just maybe now shifting gear, right, a bit, right? Washikala is kind of just starting, right? Let's go to George, right? So, you mentioned earlier, the fact that a lot of folks working in the organization are women, right? And I think there's the employment angle, but why that? Is that something, was that a very conscious thing for you from the beginning, or is it just so happened that, right, that's where you found talent?
Well, for us, I think the foundation is about getting the work done. That's our main focus. It's not necessarily about gender necessarily. But in our early days, when we started, we realized that our team members were men, especially the engineers. So we decided to recruit women engineers to join our team to balance it out. And we put our application out there for several months. We never had one. And that was quite terrible. And I could relate to it because when I was in university, electrical and electronics engineering, the women in my class would not be more than 5% of the total class size. So it was nothing that wasn't expected. So we took a bold decision to then establish a female engineering academy where we brought in engineers, brought in ladies to join, no matter your background, because we are very good in our engineering field, so we could teach them. And then we used that avenue to train more women, and then they were able to make transition to join our team, and that has been very successful. Apart from just joining our team to get employment, it's also serving as a way of encouraging other women to look at engineering field. Because recently we get a lot of application for our academy. We get more than oversubscribed, over 200% on the open application. And you get people coming out that, oh, I saw this lady on TV talking about she's an engineer at Solar Taxi, so I feel like I have to be an engineer. She studied arts. I think that I can be that also. So yes, there's a little bit of intentionality, but when it comes to the work itself, one thing we have realized is that they get the work done, even if not in a lot of better ways, but they get the work done. And I would say that greater part of our success has been that we have very competent people at the forefront, and they happen to be women. So that part is just about getting the work done, but there tends to be a lot of intentional investment into that field.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for that. Now, staying on that team roughly, right, of people, operations, Nico, right? So, setting up an e-mobility company is not easy, right? And you come from a European context where I imagine things are smoother. What are some of the things that you've learned, right, in the 3, 4, 5 years you've been at this?
I mean, we operated in Asia and in Europe, right? So, in Europe, I wouldn't necessarily say it's easier because at the time we started, we faced the same issues. There were no regulations, right? So, micromobility was a completely foreign concept to most of the European countries. There were issues within a country. One city would go for one regulation, another city would go for another regulation. So, we're seeing the same thing now in Tanzania, where we as a company, actually the first company to register officially an electric vehicle, even though there's only like fractions of regulations in place. So having said that, for us, we know that regulations are actually super important in order for us to be able to operate. Regulations will be reflected in how we can import vehicles or components, even if you assemble or if you manufacture locally. You need to be able to have proper tariffs on this, right? And these are things that make or break a business. When we talk about having import fees of 25% or 0%, that can really, really hit your gross margins. Right? So we definitely see that this is one of the major issues. But on the other hand, we're also making sure that when we operate, we are always trying to make sure that we are within the boundaries of regulations. And where it's necessary, we need to stretch it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that. Because I've met with him recently, and I remember it was quite a journey for them to be able to register their bikes. Kim, this question is for you, right? I mean, every day I wake up, right? There's somebody who's starting a new e-mobility company in East Africa, right? And I guess Nico, you could chime in as well. Like, what are your thoughts, right? Are there too many players? How does EcoBoda survive, right? Because we've had investors reach out to us, right? Every day, everybody's starting a company. How do you cope in that context?
Yeah, it's good you've asked that because I was also shocked when I had Alltech is doing e-mobility. But the thing is, we think right now all the industry players in the e-mobility sector, more so in the e2-wheelers at a very early stage. No one has done, let's say, more than 1,000 units. And for a place like Nairobi, where you have 150,000 motorcycles, you have people, electric companies with 50, 10, 5. That's completely nothing compared to the petrol bikes that we have here. So I think my view is that the main competitor that we have is driving out the petrol bikes that we have on the road. That's our biggest competitor. And also, of course, when it comes to the e-mobility segment where we have people coming in every day, you realize that there is a phase which you have to go through when you're starting a company. You have to run trials, you have to do tests, pilots, and for us, we started in 2020, and 2 years now, we are ready for commercial rollout, and we think any other player that comes into the sector will undergo the same phase, do their own trials, try to understand the market, and so it's down to whoever is able to do that fast enough. But we think that there's some things, especially when you're dealing with hardware, a bike, it's not something you bring in today and it's good to work, it's good to work the next day. You have to do tests and pilots, and that takes time. So my take is we're not worried. It's good. It shows that the market is ready for it and that there's interest from the customers and also investors.
Thank you so much. Washikala, this is a difficult question, I would say, for you. Congo, right, electricity access is not great, right? I think that's why you started Altec. I mean, people might wonder, I mean, e-mobility, right? Like, I get the opportunity, but how are you going to make it work?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think the question is all about the challenges. Yeah, like any other business, there are challenges. I don't worry about those, right? Because, you know, definitely you expect them, and there will be solutions along the way anyway. In terms of electricity, for instance, yeah, you know, definitely the grid, the national grid, not reliable, but we always found some reliable lines there you can work with. And so during our pilot, for instance, we are working with we are piloting with 3 sources of energy already. Like in Goma, we are working with a private grid provider called Sokode. In Kinshasa and Lubumbashi are working with the national grid called SNEL. And in Kisangani, we have developed our own. We have a solar mini grid that we are powering. So, and we are learning a lot, working with all these sources of energy to power, to charge batteries and things like that. And through the lesson that we'll get, we have already learned a lot in terms of that, and I think we are able to move forward. So that is not a big challenge for us. The challenge that I see, especially when it comes to this sector, is that, so there are young people that are on the road, right? So yeah, you can talk about the motorcycles is great, the technology, like fleet management systems, great. Yeah, they present challenge, but I think those are little challenges that can be overcome. But we are putting young people's lives, they're on the roads. That is what really, for me is a big challenge. How do we make sure that these people are safe, in terms of training them, and so that we can definitely reduce significant the rate of accidents on the road and things like that. This is, I think, the most challenging because at the end of the day, these are the customers that you are targeting, and they have to make money, have to go back to their families, and with that little something that they get out of it, and really, yeah. So it is how do we make sure that those people that are on the road are safe, they do it safely, they go back to their families in the evening with the money that they make. This is what really keep me up at night and working so hard to make sure that we develop a system that take care of these young people.
Well, thank you so much for that, and I think that just leads to the next question, right? And I think this is George. Just really picking off what Washikala said. What keeps you up at night?
Well, I think it's the same thing of the reason why we started. After our first prototype, it was not really meant to come out. It was something that we're doing in-house. And someone, the news got out that we have built this, and it started trending. But our quest was, first of all, finding a sustainable transportation option for Africans. I think the period was similar to what we currently have, where there's high costs of petrol and diesel, leading to high inflation, high cost of living. And we wanted to find a sustainable alternative, and in a way also to make it accessible, because access to mobility is a luxury in Africa. It's, where mobility is needed, most people don't have it. So that same principle is what currently keeps us going, and that's what keeps me at night. That every single day that we go to work, we are working on solutions that goes a long way to elevate poverty, provide sustainable options for Africans, even the ability to move food from one rural area to the epicenter of where it is needed. It's a big win for that one. In Ghana, currently our inflation is quite high, and we have close to about 40% or above that being due to transportation, and then about 30 or so being due to food, which is linked together. It's transportation leading to that part of the food. So if you're able to address this in a way, we bring down the cost of food. And bringing down the cost of food means that you're able to cater for the cost of living for that one. So we are able to have direct impact in the lives of many with every single product that we do. And then the other part of it is the job creation part. Every bag that we produce goes out there to create a job, literally for us. And seeing, having the opportunity to take people out of unemployment. A lot of the people that we employ are people otherwise would not have jobs. And if you get a chance to talk to them day in and day out, they come to you with issues that, oh, my mother is sick, and I needed money to keep them, to take care of the family, and all that. They are more like breadwinners in their family. And with that alone, you know that, listen, we are making change in people's life. And for us, that is what helps us to work hard to overcome our challenges every day. And that is what keeps me at night, knowing that we are making positive impact with every single product that we put on the road.
Well, thanks for that. Nico, I'm sure you see this question coming. What keeps you up at night?
Nothing, man. I sleep well. No, it's important. That was not meant to be a joke, right? Mental health for farmers is important, so we got to find balance. We gotta, if we don't sleep tonight, we just not. Guys, I'm not joking. Like we're not going to be able to execute on our business. That's the reality. So having said that, our identity as a company, we are borderline obsessed problem solvers, right? In order to really solve problems, we need to have structures in place, and that allows us to actually be on point and to go home and just sleep. You know, like we as Tree, like we have like 3 principles that we base the company on, which is logic. You really, really think about what we're doing. We challenge each other. Like we are rigorous. So when we made a decision, we just, execute on this ruthlessly. We don't care about left or right. Like we know we've put all like our thought into that in the decision. And then empathy, like really, really like considering the customer. We are customer-centric company. So with all the benefits that you stated, all the benefits that Persistent has seen in e-mobility, yes, but we as Tree, we don't want to be a presentation. We don't want to be an Excel sheet. We actually want to execute. So for that, I need to sleep because I need to trust my process, right?
Thanks for that, Nico. Kim, slightly different question for you. You've been at this for a while, right? What do you now know you wish you knew when you started?
Well, I wish I knew it was not going to take a day. Yeah, so when I started, let me just reference when we were even trying to design the latest model of our bike. I told Tukam and Persistent that we can do this in 5 months, right? Yeah, so to say it has taken us more than 10 months. So I feel like I've done nothing this year, just waiting for the bike to be ready. And so I wish I knew that it takes more time and basically more perseverance. And there are some questions that for me as an entrepreneur, some things that being a local here in Kenya, they are too obvious, right? I don't think much about them, but you find that Tukam asked me every other time, like, I haven't really thought about it. I thought it was very obvious, So those small things that you think are very obvious, you actually need to think much about them, and especially when you are developing a new market, it's not so obvious the way you would think as an entrepreneur.
Thanks for that, Washikala. Since you're starting, right, this e-mobility journey, and you've already built a fairly successful company, what do you worry about when you think about building out this business, or beyond? You mentioned at some point, right, that there are all these young people whose lives you're impacting, right? And that took, but beyond that, like as you think about starting something new, what do you worry about?
Yeah, worries. So I think we don't focus much on worries. We focus much on the potential that is there and trying to do everything to take advantage of that potential. Definitely we understand like building a company in the DRC is not easy, but also, yeah, definitely you need to attract talent, you need to attract capital and other things. But you know, we have learned a lot building the Pego Solar Company in the DRC. And we think there are, you know, business essentials, key principles that we need to focus on, you know, in terms of profitability of the business, in terms of, yeah, you know, I think also for e-mobility fleet, like effective fleet management and things like that. The rest will come if we focus on this. But also, like, definitely the product itself. I think if we continue focusing on these things, definitely, then we believe we will also be successful.
Thank you so much, Washikala. I think at this point, then, we'll open for questions. So we'll take about 15, maybe 20 minutes of question, and then we'll conclude. Is there?
Thank you. This is Chris Adoon. So everybody, I think what would be helpful for the audience is maybe to take a minute and each of you describe what your basic business model is, because obviously those of us who are working with you know that there are some pretty big differences, and maybe we should start with Washikala and move towards George with that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, so the business model that we are piloting at the moment is purely rental business. Because you know, definitely there are a lot of companies that are doing rental to own for the motorcycle, and then definitely they do the charging. They charge border for battery swapping and things like that. But for us, we are trying to do purely rental. Yeah, and there is a reason why we are trying to do that. As I said, we focus more on profitability. We are working in the DRC, and in order to attract, you know, capital, and in the DRC, you need to be able to prove that you can be profitable from day one. It's also like something that we have developed ourselves. I don't think that we have a luxury as a company operating in the DRC to be losing money for 5 years, 10 years. So we try to be profitable from day one, and the business model that we are building is really based on that. How are we able to build a company that is profitable from day one? So, yeah. So that's what we do.
But then, if I could just ask, so you brand the motorcycles as Altec motorcycles. Your customers, who are the riders, pay you on a daily basis, and you run the charging stations.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, yeah, that's true. We brand everything. We have been working, you know, we have learned a lot, as I said. We have been working, even in Pego Solar, we did focus on distribution. We don't design and manufacture product because we believe there are, you know, a lot of companies that are doing that better. They have a lot of expertise, and they have developed a lot of expertise in that area. So we have just partnered. We decided to partner with companies that really manufacture high quality solar products. And this is the same approach that we have taken with e-mobility. So we don't design and manufacture this. So we partner with companies that do that, and we focus on the distribution. So it seems that one of our solar product manufacturers is also like an e-motorcycle manufacturer, and then we just leverage on that partnership. So Yeah, so definitely what we do is definitely all the motorcycles are branded Altec, and definitely we just rent on a daily basis to these young people who do border on a daily basis. But again, this is not like a new model. It's already what is happening. If you look, for instance, I'm talking about the DRC market anyway. So it's already what is happening on a daily basis. You see people who have private owners who buy these motorcycles, ICE motorcycles, and then they rent to young people on a daily basis. Sometimes on purely rental model, but other times on a rent to own. So it's already happening there. So we think that, based on what our analysis, we believe that this is a model that can quickly make us profitable and be able to do this on a scale.
But isn't there some risk to Altec if you just let the drivers drive? And I mean, you hedge that risk, don't you, by training and insurance and the like?
Could you repeat the question, please?
You train your drivers.
Yeah.
You get them insurance.
Yeah, definitely. So we do train. As I said, we want those guys to go there and be safe. So what we have done, we have just developed a complete package which includes training on road safety, but also definitely give them health insurance, and and then we take care of all the repairs and things like that, and also the charging and swapping, and then they focus on their job. Because we understand that we just want to democratize this whole business instead of, we believe even if you put a small down payment is already a barrier for some of those young people. So we just put this as, make it really accessible to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, so, yes, our business model is a bit different from Washikala's, mostly because of the market we are in, where you find that most of the bodabodas that you have on the road are financed through a lease-to-own model, and that's what we're doing. It's my background. I did that before even starting EcoBoda, and basically it's a loan program where you pay for the asset for a duration of between 18 to even 24 months, depending on the financier. Then you get to own the bike. And the reason this is very common is because the young people who want to own this asset, it's an easy way for them to get to own the bike. So what we do as EcoBoda is we run a battery as a service infrastructure where we do the swapping. We charge per swap, and also we design and sell the bikes through the lease-to-own program. Right now we are doing in-house financing, where we finance the rider. They pay a small deposit, then they pay the rest daily or weekly, depending on the agreement. And also for B2B clients, we work on battery rental model and also a monthly payment for the bikes. So technically when they complete this payment, they own the bike, but they don't own the batteries. So we are in charge of replacing the batteries, servicing them, and making sure they are available for them. On the bike side, they are responsible for doing this, buying the spare parts, maintenance and everything. Since we are co-owning the product jointly for that duration of 18 months. After that, it's their bike.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for us it's very simple. We have lease-to-own, similar to what Kim just explained, and pure sales. And in comparison to other companies in the place in the area, we don't go for swapping stations. We don't want to waste the money on building that infrastructure. It's, in an unregulated market, it's just completely insane. So we are basically giving out the batteries to the drivers so they can charge at home. What we're doing is we're giving them speed chargers, which allows them to actually have a charger with them, and then wherever they are, they can actually charge throughout the day, and it has proven to be quite stable. Yeah, that's that. Capital efficiency, it's our main focus right now.
For us at this point, we are more of assets provider in the ecosystem, and our business model have been more of progressive. At this point, I can say comprehensive and inclusive. That allow, we started with renting to SMAs when we entered the market with the two-wheelers, and then later on we came with the four-wheelers. The three-wheelers was mainly based on order and produce and sell. So if you order before, we can produce the three-wheelers to you, because it's not something that we focus on as a mainstream. At this point, somewhere last year, we started doing direct sales when we opened up our product for that. And now we're also doing lease to own, where you make a down payment and then you're able to pay it over time on. Over time, for us, most of the models that we were working with, or we started to work with, the focus was to build the data, because we are more interested in getting the right partners to implement those business model mainly. For us, the data then was basically used to be able to tell a good story about what can then be done. So that has really helped us a lot. With the renting, the model, the data is there. The market is proving it's huge that we can't even serve at this point. For the direct sales, we have built the data. We know those that prefer to go for direct sales, either on the two-wheelers or four-wheelers, and then even the three-wheelers. For the lease to own, we have built the data strongly, especially working with Jumia, Bolt, Food, and Glovo. We have built the data for that. We are currently started working with Bolt also on the cars, on the four-wheelers, where we have some of our vehicles on their platform, and we are building the data that shows how long it takes for them to make money to pay over their assets. And then with that information, it enables us to partner with the right people that specialize in that. And then we can then keep on focusing on our part that we are very good at. So that is providing the assets. And that is where we want to really scale at that end. So for now, yeah, we have that models running, but the long term, work with the right partners to be able to scale up.
But there's more to your business than that, isn't there, George?
Pardon?
There's more to your business. You want to speak a little bit about your manufacturing?
Oh, sure, definitely. So as I mentioned, we do the design, and then we do the assembling. Mostly send our designs to specification to China or India, and then we get the parts coming in. Then we assemble. Currently production, we're able to do about 10 bikes a day. We have 2 assembly plants, one in Accra, one in Kumasi. We are currently working on scaling out the production. We are aiming, starting from next week, we are aiming at doing 50 bikes a week. That should be able to prepare us a bit faster in terms of our production on. We also have an e-mobility research center based in Kumasi, where we do more work on our next product line. We are very focused on improving the value chain and also improving, optimizing on our product, both for quality and for price. So there are long-term lies with us having a good control of our products. We have had bad experience with getting to not having control over some key products, key parts of your product. So that is something that we are doing. We have a battery lab where we are able to design and produce and recycle and repurpose or reuse the batteries that comes from that. Our batteries packs really give us a great advantage because we are easy, and we find it easy to diagnose the battery, which is a very big headache for a lot of e-mobility companies. For now, for our battery pack, we are able to know which at the cellular level, what is wrong with it. And that gives us a great competitive edge compared to buying a battery pack from China when you don't have control over the products. You don't have a lot of quality issues. And I believe a number of e-mobility companies can testify to that aspect. So having more control gives us a great point for the kind of scale that we want to do. And that we are currently doing that, a lot of that at Kumasi. we are hoping to be able to also scale up equally, both the production of the bikes and our next point also being the production of the cars. Currently we do, for the four-wheelers, we do just SKD, because we have a very small production side. We don't have much on, but we are acquiring our Lancers, final stages of our Lancers from the government to go into the four-wheelers. That also translates to the two-wheelers. And that allow us to increase our production. And that allow us to provide more assets to the sub-region. As I mentioned, that is where we want to be, asset provider. And we are already exporting to a number of the countries that I mentioned earlier on. But for us, having that control help us to optimize the value chain.
May I jump in?
Yes.
When it comes to China, my co-founder is Chinese. We have an entity in China, which is our sourcing entity. You can get amazing product. The only thing is you need to actively manage your supply chain, but that's everywhere in the world is the same. So getting great BMS, you can get great BMS off the shelf, no issues. Down to the cell level, you get all the monitoring capabilities that you need. So I really believe supply chain management for every asset-heavy business needs to be a core competency, especially upstream partners. Downstream partners not so much, but upstream partners 100%.
Yeah, so let me give a typical example of that. I believe with what you're saying. In the past, some of our initial product, we have a lot of issues with motor hub design. The terrain in Africa means that most of the roads are bumpy and all that. The motor hubs were not really designed for those kind of conditions, really designed on that. So we have sensors issues and all that. Now, for us to get to the design level, to be able to tweak the performance in the way that we want to, was not that easy. The Chinese are not willing to give open source that part of that design for us. Right? So even when we're having a technical conversation with them, they are not willing to be so open about the product. Right? So yes, we are still going to have a good supply chain working with the plants that we decide to work with. We are going to take away the middle players between us and the factories, which is be more of our design. But then we have control over the performance, and we are able to tweak the performance, because for the level of scale that we want to be in, the turnaround time for design improvement is critical, right? And we are in the margins in which we are working with, one of the aim is cost parity. The margins that we want to work with, such a design improvement means a lot to the margin that we want to work with. So yes, I agree with you on having a good supply control over the supply chain. I've been to Shenzhen several times, worked with a number of people there. So I understand that part in terms of who you work with. But having control of the design is extremely critical to us.
Where's the mic?
I have.
Good.
Hi, thank you. Paul Clements Hunt from UK law company Mishcon Rea. It's a question for Kim. Kubota, all fabulous presentations. But in terms of that mix of affordable credit for the Boda drivers and the bike, how do you manage the sort of non-performing loan side of that, or how will you do it? The sort of the asset-backed receivables model is challenging, but that MPL piece is, I think, essential. It would be good to get your perspective on that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I come from a Boda leasing background. I started a company way back in 2019 where I would buy the normal petrol bikes and lease them to riders. And I did quite a number of them. And that we had around 96% loan repayment rate. What the key factor here is actually the maturity of the lease-to-own market in Kenya. About 80% of the bikes you see on the roads are financed through lease-to-own. So the riders know the requirements, they understand the consequences of non-repayment, which is repossession of the asset. And because they have an additional incentive, to get to own the asset, they are more willing to continue with the payment, unless, of course, there is something which really is preventing them. But most of them actually see through the loan payment. So for us in cash management perspective, or rather capital management perspective, we are doing our own lease to own for the initial units, but when we put these units on the road, we are looking at partnerships. We have very good financing companies here in Kenya, and we think they will be willing to finance our asset. So we'll have that off our books at some point.
Hi, my name is Peter from Responsibility Investment. I had a question linked to the business model as well. From, I guess, for Kim and maybe the others as well. From your experience, what do you see as the key motivation and the key driver for the end user in the end of the day to switch from petrol to e-mobility? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so, well, I would say right now we are capitalizing on the high fuel prices, but that's not the long-term goal. It's really showing them that, we have a good bike here that matches what you have, and we are able to actually give you this bike, which is very low on maintenance, almost 80% lower on maintenance. That's basically our long-term selling point. Because for them, they just need a bike. They might not really care about, the environment, emissions, as long as the product works. And that's now what we're trying to address, building a bike that's suitable for this environment, that matches what they've gotten used to, and basically show them it works. Yeah. Then they'll be able to experience the long-term savings on the servicing and maintenance part.
So financial cost savings, effectively.
Yeah.
It is quite similar across board for I believe a number of African startup one. It's the economic benefits, especially on the commercial side, working with riders that are using the bike to do business. They see an immediate, like a day's change in how much they are earning. And with that, you don't need to talk much. Currently, the cost saving is about over 90% of how much they save, even if they charge from the grid. And with that, you don't need to convince the person too much to switch. So the cost saving, I think, is a great driver. Other things are going to kick in at a point at maturity. As he mentioned, the quality of the product, doing what it's supposed to do and all that. But for now, it's purely economics. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentations. My name is Andrew Madi, the Kenya Renewable Energy Association. My question has to do with a follow-up to what was just asked on the pricing and the benefit. Have you factored in the taxation? Because you find that governments collect a lot of their revenue, at least here in Kenya, from petroleum products, and there's special levies such as road maintenance levy that is bundled into the cost of petrol. So when looking at the benefits, do you also consider or preemptively look at what kind of a tax regime can be proposed so that you don't get pushback from the government or seeing a drop in the collection, particularly when a lot of, say, renewable energy technologies are exempted from customs duty and VAT? And to just follow up is that the Kenya Renewable Energy Association and the Africa Electric Mobility Developers Association are already working together to frame that into a dialogue for governments and developers. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me check that. Andrew is my colleague at the KEBS board for technical committee for e-mobility, and I think actually is better off advising on that because he's advising the government on such policies. But I think at the end of the day, based on the reports that we all know, even from Korea, if if they factor in all those taxes that maybe they will be proposed, of course we think there'll be a drop in compared to what they're getting from fuel, because at the end of the day it needs to, using the grid has to be cheaper for the riders and also for the other EV owners. But I think it's more of a long-term thing. It has to take the climate action angle from the government, where there are some things you would be willing to forego, especially in terms of tax collections, to be able to strengthen some other sectors. Yeah.
And sharing more of our perspective on that. So maybe I don't know how the Kenyan market is, but for us, we're actually getting more support from the government to do this. One, the government spend a lot on fuel compared from how much they get from tax on it. It is, I mentioned earlier on, it is one of the things that is driving high cost of living in the country because of the cost of fuel. And the government sees one of the ways to lessen its burden is to be able to make a transition gradually to that on. Definitely, they'll have more revenue from exporting of this petrol stuff than importing the refined petrol into that ton. So the government is actually urging us on. And in most African countries, as I'm aware of, actually subsidize petrol product. And for some economy, it's a huge burden compared to how much they make from it in terms of taxes. So it becomes more in the government favor that the transition happen and happen faster, right? Because then it's allowed the government to prioritize and move money to other more important things than subsidizing. Petrol will still have a market to play, like to have a role to play, but it should be disconnected to a key sector in the long term, like mobility, which is very critical for economic development. And it's kind of serving as a barrier in speed up such economic development. So I know with that incentive being there, most governments would rather want to see a transition happening than to continue to subsidize and then spend so much money on refined petrol product into their country. So.
Great, thank you all for that. I had a question from you, Kim. Sorry, I'm Caitlin Whale from Counteract, a London-based VC investor in carbon removal technologies. You said something about a need for hard tech funding and that there has been new money coming into this space, and I was curious where that was coming from geographically and what those hard tech funders were needing to see.
I think I can say right now the only people who have invested in us as Ecoboda is Persistent, but of course there is a lot of interest coming from other people, but typical of VCs, they need to see traction. You don't tell them I'm designing a bike, they haven't seen the bike, so they'll tell you we'll talk later. But I think there is a lot of interest, and because basically all the money can't go to fintech, right? It's you will need a form of mobility. At the end of the day, we are not just going to sit at home using our phones. We need to move from point A to point B, and we need to evolve the hardware for that. Yeah, so we think eventually, maybe when we are done with fintech, which is soon, then we will have a lot of money coming to building robust EVs for Africa. Yeah.
But also, just to a point, I think the mobility sector presents business opportunities. It's a very complex business. It's not only about hardware. It's also like software and things like that. So you wouldn't be surprised someone who starts with hardware but also build a very complex business that also includes software and Uber-like services and delivery services and things like that. So yeah, so I wouldn't worry much about maybe fintech funding coming into this sector anyway.
Okay. Use the camera. Yeah. So Prince, Rentos Energy. Thank you guys for an insightful conversation. So I had just a question. Maybe I'd leave that with Washikala, and then maybe anyone who feels to chime in. Quite interested in understanding how technology is helping you in terms of collections. If I do understand that, I mean, based on the model you have presented, right? You basically have to build it like an upfront cost, you know, and you expect to get that payment back over time. I'm just wondering how it's done in your markets, and then maybe to Nico too as well, and how you're using technology to help collections. Basically, because I know that most of the customers on your side will be typically in the informal sector. So how do you look at that? Are they collaborations with the fintechs? How exactly is that working? Thank you.
I think the question is not also related to the model that the business model that we are piloting, but it's for all these guys, I think. Yeah, particularly for Altec, we already have a lot of experience in terms of PayGo Solar, all right, and in terms of payment collection. So we are using the same experience, you know, when it comes to collecting payments to this e-mobility business. So we have technologies that we are developing. For instance, all the battery and even the motorcycle will be pay-as-you-go enabled, right? So that means that we'll be able to remotely control the batteries and the motorcycle based on the rider's payments. And so we are developing that platform. We already have a platform that we use for our PayGo Solar system, and we are adapting it to the mobility. So we are developing different technologies in terms of fleet management when it comes to payment collection, but also for asset security in terms of asset tracking, geofencing, and things like that. So I believe that all of this technology will help us, you know, to manage better our portfolio. Yeah, we'll discuss. Maybe we'll also discuss more about. We'll just discuss in next panels about our PayGo Solar. We have one of the best performing portfolios in the industry, and thanks of the system that you have put in place. So we already have an experience in that area. Yeah.
So I love the question because essentially your business model is slightly different, right? So the three of us are actually completely stupid, right? Because what we're doing at the core is we are saying we are better than banks at vetting a customer and at managing a customer. So when we say that, right, we need to understand, okay, how do they actually vet the customer? How do they actually manage a customer? And I can only speak, we can only speak for Tanzania, right? So the way we see it in Tanzania happening is that this is very offline. There's very little technology being used. Luckily, we have the experience that we've had 30,000 e-kick scooters on the management in real time, so we know how to, you know, onboard customers and manage assets. So we are using AI for document check, verification of documents. We are using, obviously, as the three of us all are doing, we are making sure that the asset is remotely controllable, real-time performance on the battery, on the asset, geo-tracking, geo-fencing. And then at the end of the day, there's also that notion that Kim very rightfully pointed out. There is a maturity in the market for lease-to-own schemes, right? And no matter how much technology we are using, which we are, because it is essential, it allows us to be a lot more cost efficient on the vetting and on the management. There's also that element where you simply, to a certain extent, and that is calculated risk, you also need to trust your customer, because if you don't trust your customer, you're probably in the wrong business, right?
Yeah, just to add on that, you know, especially for us that have been doing PayGo Solar, whose contract value most of these assets. The DRC market is different from other car markets because if you look at the type of solar home system you're selling, contract value 1,700, right? So in many markets, it's like contract value of this solar home system is 120, 220. But in spite of that, you really need to be careful in terms of managing the things. So in terms of the e-motorcycles, we are talking about products whose contract value is 2,000 plus, sometimes 1,500, 2,000 plus, right? So I think this e-mobility business has a lot to learn from the Pego Solar to avoid to make the same mistake. Because if you don't, it might be quite, you might learn it a little bit late, and it causes a lot of trouble financially. So I think it is one of the areas, like portfolio management, fleet management is one of the areas like people should really focus a lot on, because it really can create a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions?
Hi, this is sort of, I'm Divya from Get Invest, and thank you all for the presentations. Good to know, Nico, you sleep well. Important, for sure. I have a quick question, and it applies to all of you. I'm wondering, how does your customer base look like? Are you only focusing on urban African cities, or do you also focus on rural? And in case you do focus on rural customers, how do you deal with the non-availability or non-reliability of energy access in such areas? Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if I can start different. So I think most of companies now are focusing in urban areas. That's what I think. Because it's, if you look at the market that's being targeted, so this is in terms of the public transport, for instance. So mostly it's still urban. There are companies that are already trying, like testing, also going rural a little bit, but it's challenging because of the lack of low access to electricity in those areas. As I said, for instance, in the DRC, we are piloting also charging through a solar mini grid, which is, it works, but not all the times. It provides a lot of challenging sometimes. So, so I think for the foreseeable future for Africa, most of this e-mobility business will be focusing mostly in urban areas. Definitely big companies that will be trying for rural, but it's challenging. It's also looking at the market there. The low-hanging fruits are in urban areas. That's what I think.
So, I mean, obviously, right, the low-hanging fruits are in the urban market because there's not only a correlation, but there's also causation between urbanization rate and mobilization rate, right? So, meaning how many cars you have per 1,000 people. So, we all intuitively agree, and not only intuitively, but statistically, we can also prove that you have simply more vehicles in urban centers. However, again, speaking from a Tanzanian perspective, right, 90% of urban transport is two-wheel based in Tanzania. And we are convinced, in fact, that e-mobility is going to have a positive impact on off-grid solutions, right? Because right now, if you think of it, right, if you're a solar provider, you would target households. Now, if you target households, it's a super, super hard sell, in fact, to say, okay, hey, how about we put that solar panel on your roof? But you have to imagine, the households usually need to make sure that the money makes sense to pay for food, to pay for school fees, yada, yada, yada. So sometimes you don't really pay on a solar panel, right? Whereas with a electric motorbike or electric tuk-tuk, whatever, it's not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity because you need to move. And if you can move cheaply in a rural area, that has even a bigger economic impact on your day-to-day than in the urban area. So is it a market we're looking at? Yes, absolutely. Are we looking at it right now? Absolutely not. We cannot do that, right? But down the road, definitely.
Yeah, so, just like Nico pointed out, I think considering that we are at the very early stages, we just started the commercial rollout, then you find that the focus mostly is on the densities, you know, the vehicular densities, the bike densities. And for we need to focus on that, you know, in an area like an urban setting where you have very many bikes, and you can just roll out one swap station and it can serve maybe 100 people, as opposed to doing in a rural setting where you would have maybe 3 or 5 of them to be able to serve those 100 people. And this is of course down to also cash management, and also being able to be very close to the area of operation where you are able to monitor everything, learn to scale the product, the battery as a service model before moving downstream to the rural areas.
I'm not an e-mobility entrepreneur, but I've looked at the market a bit, and there are places where that's starting to happen, right? Where people are starting to look at rural contexts, and what at least we've seen is that you have people looking at packaging a bike essentially with a solar panel, right? A different kind of charging, and you know there is, I mean, to go back to your question a bit, right? That there is, I think, potential here down the road to see that kind of rural electrification in a way happens alongside this, because it is the case that in a lot of rural areas, you know, your two-wheelers, perhaps not cars, are an essential way of moving, but importantly moving agricultural, right, produce, which is at the heartbeat of how people make a living in a lot of our rural parts of the continent.
Yeah, I mean, to add on briefly, our initial products that we had come with what we call a solar hub. So we have the mini and the big solar hub, and we're selling that with our vehicle. So when you buy a vehicle, a two-wheeler, you can buy the solar hub to charge from that, so you don't have to depend on the grid. We did some initial pilots in peri-urbans and rural areas to come with on. But definitely, based on what they are saying also, the economics is at a point in time that work on, and it needs some form of heavy lifting to also to happen. Well, those that can purchase the product now, in the area areas don't really exist. We need to come with a different model to be able to thrive in that one. So we have done a lot of research work around that, did some piloting especially for agri purpose, and does make a lot of commercial value to them, especially those in the northern part of Ghana where it's predominantly are farmers. So we did that, but the economics have to back it up. We have done it, the results is there, but we need the economics to turn positive to be able to implement something. Yeah.
Hi, just a quick add-on. On the urban agricultural sort of divide in terms of e-mobility, I would love to pick up a conversation with some of you for this reason. We just finished 2 pieces of work for separate UN agencies, the IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and then the UN Capital Development Fund. At the heart of it was a new investment thesis for both entities separately. E-mobility was absolutely key in terms of the last mile piece. And you know, I think there's money on the table there for people willing to drive that quickly. So it's a new investment thesis. It's right at the top of those agencies. They want to speak to entrepreneurs on the ground, but they want to do that, the last mile piece in terms of, you know, the logistics and movement of rural produce for the last mile. So I'll come chasing you guys afterwards. Thanks.
I think another important element to point when it comes to serving rural markets with e-mobility. If you look at all the models that are being implemented at the moment, whether it is rental or rent to own, at the end of the day, it requires certain period. Even rent to own is maybe 18 months. Kim, is it how many months you do?
18.
18, definitely. So we are also talking about durability of the of the motorcycle, for instance. You know, rural roads are crazy. You know, you put any motorcycle on a rural road, it does 6 months. It's really broken after 6 months. So how do you get your money after that? Because they won't pay after 6 months. If you definitely whatever. Your payment plan is about 18 months or 24 months or 30 months, and the motorbike gets completely broken within 6 months, then definitely you won't make any money. So it requires a lot of working on the durability of the motorcycles and things like that, if people have to be able to do it. So yeah, if you are selling up front, definitely you don't care, right? If you're just selling up front, those people will definitely go. You just build maybe an infrastructure, charging, swapping infrastructure along the way. They pay you up front, definitely they do. Because, you know, as they move people and goods into rural areas, they also make a lot of money anyway. So, but if it's upfront, definitely they'll be able to do that. But it is on credit, whether it's rent to own or rent to purely rental. You need a certain period, long period, to recoup your investment. And maybe the motorcycle itself or three-wheeler itself wouldn't last that long if you target the rural areas. Yeah.
I think I need to sell Washiakala my bike because it looks like he has had really bad experiences with the bike he's been using. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Mark Hankins. I'm also from Get Invest. I'm the financial catalyst. We're the people that try to connect the entrepreneurs with the investors. We have, I think, 10 e-mobility clients. We've been looking at it pretty closely. And Nico, lazima tuongee na wewe kwa sababu tuko na habari. So I'm really excited that Persistent put together a group of local entrepreneurs that are grounded. This is really exciting. I have a question. So I was working. I realize that you guys have to focus on the urban markets because that's where the money is, and it's really important that we don't get lost in the other smaller markets. However, the last mile markets are really important, and there's one sector that's suffering right now. It's the mini grid sector. The mini grid sector is not building. And the reason it's not building is because it can't sell electricity. And what mini grids need are anchor loads and anchor businesses. So here's my question is, I'm not asking you to go into those last mile areas, but is it possible to partner with the mini grid players and maybe set up partnerships or set up dual investments to get the money to those players so that they can make investments. And I'll just give one example. So I have a client, and they were dumping hydropower at one of their sites. They had a resistor and that you could cook eggs on it. And I said, well, what's happening here? They said, well, we got too much electricity. So I said, why don't you find a productive use? And we looked at all the productive uses. They said e-mobility was one of their priority uses. They immediately bought 30 electric motorcycles, and they're on the way now. So, and that is now solving a problem of that mini grid. So my question is, have you thought about it? And I'm not asking you to go into that business, but have you thought about coming up with partnerships with mini grids to make their businesses more profitable? Thank you.
That's a short answer, yes, absolutely. It's just a little side anecdote. I mean, when we entered the market, when we entered Tanzania, we always looked at urban mobility. That was our goal, because this is where we're coming from, this is what we know, right? But our starting point was, in fact, electric outboard engines at Lake Victoria. And what I did as a market research, I went all the way into Lake Victoria. And, you know, I'm not even talking about Ukerewe, which is like 50 kilometers in Lake Victoria, but I'm talking about the small islands around Ukerewe. We're talking about, you know, islands that don't have electricity, but you find a petrol station. It just doesn't make sense, right? But it shows you how dependent the fishermen are on fuel. It would make much more sense for, you know, an off-grid solution to be there and to make sure that, you know, all of these islands are powered. The lake zone is powered, but the islands are not, right? So for us, we understood that for electric outboard engines, the main business would be actually on these islands. But how are you going to do that? Impossible. So we would need to partner with an off-grid solution. Absolutely.
But to add on, as I mentioned, in the initial stages, before we chose which entry model that we're going to get to the market with, we virtually set on the urban two-wheelers as our first model of entry. We did work around that. We did product design around that. I think what is missing in this piece, everyone knows that productive usage of electricity, one of it is mobility. So it goes without saying, but it needs to be backed with investment. Because the kind of investors that we can get now are those that are coming in and like asking for some numbers or asking for some traction that you can easily get that from entering from maybe an urban area on. But this is something that can be achieved with more of direct matching, where we know, okay, this is pay as it, that is the mobility player, we match them up. In that case, if I don't have direct customer for my product, in that way, I'll be tempted to go with that. But I can't really define entering into a market where I might not easily get the numbers to support that kind of investment on my own. Right? So I think that is the gap. If we get someone to bridge it, match it up, then we should be able to do it because we have the solutions already. It's not like now that we are going to design the solutions. The solutions are there, but the time is not ripe yet. So it can be accelerated with right matching and right investment.
All right, thank you. So, it's the final question over here then.
My name is Wangwe Robert from Greenmax Capital. My question is, I think there is a lot of time and capital that has been spent on designing. Do you feel that you have also spent enough time and money in marketing? For example, Nico, you spoke about Ukerewe. We tried an e-mobility boat, and our biggest issue was they were saying it's not powerful enough. It was a belief. There is culture towards the market also. Do you feel like you've done enough on that side?
Yeah, Nico.
I love that question. Look, the main focus is operations. Everything else is nice to have. It's add-on. It's a secondary priority, right? The worst thing you can do is to say, yeah, we don't get traction. Let's just put money on marketing. Maybe your product just doesn't make any sense, right? When we talk about designing products, we went for a very different route. We went for customizing off-the-shelf products. Why is that? Capital efficiency, right? Like we imported a few products, and that allows us, in fact, to tap already into a production capability and capacity of over 10,000 assets a year. I don't need to bother about whether I will be able, once there's a product market fit, whether I can supply the product, right? Luckily, we have product market fit. We successfully proven that. And marketing, it is a nice to have. And what you're talking about, the culture, right? Maybe your product just is not good enough. I'm not talking specifically about your product. I'm talking about generally speaking, right? That takes time. Marketing, oftentimes, literally is just a cover-up for a lack of product market fit. Get your product market fit first, then go for your business model market fit. Marketing is nice to have. But if you're going crazy with your marketing spending, then that's a red flag. You don't have a good business. Unless you're freaking Apple and you have like a 40% markup on everything, and marketing spending is above 5%. But come on, man. We are serving a different market. We are not serving the luxury market. It's very simple. Let's talk about fundamentals here, right? What can you do? You can either compete on price or you can compete on quality. We are competing on price, all of us. So marketing is an afterthought.
Great, thank you for that thought. I think we need to close. I'm going to lose my job if I continue. So thank you again, for I think all of your questions, right? For taking the time to be here. I think thank you as well for the entrepreneurs, right? I think hopefully you've gotten a pretty good view from the ground. I think at least the takeaway, at least for me, is that e-mobility is exciting, but it is complex, right? And so, but there's opportunity still, right? Especially, I think, the rural context, and I think our hope collectively is that at some point something is figured out that takes us in that direction. I'll then hand over now to Wairimu to take us in the next part of the program. Thank you so much. Please, hand of applause for Alan to go next.
Thank you. Thank you to come and your very able panel. Let's give them another round. From the questions, that was very exciting, and that's just the start. We've got more interesting discussions coming up. We're going to move on to our tea break, and tea is served outside. They're just right outside us. There is another tea break on the extreme left, but that's for another group. So please don't go to that group, we'll get fined. Loos are on the extreme left past the do not touch tea break. This is the tea break. Let's please come back in 15 minutes, which is 11:05. Please feel free to take your tea, stretch your legs, and then come back in even as you socialize so that we can start the next panel on time. Asanteni sana. Thank you.